Welcome to Milton and King's On the Wall podcast, where we engage in conversations with artists, designers, and more. Today we speak with Jewel Marlowe, an interior designer based in the Washington D.C. area. We hope you enjoy this conversation. If you do, please subscribe and consider leaving us a rating and review. Hey, Jewel.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can. How are you?
I'm trying out new technology, and that's always scary.
Oh, what's the new technology?
A $20 new microphone that I ran and got an hour ago, so it's a big deal.
Fantastic. So you're ready for podcasting now.
Oh, I'm pretty much a pro at this point. Yeah, I'm qualified.
That's awesome. Well, it's great to actually be on the phone with you because I feel like we've had an email relationship for like 6 years.
Forever. Yes. It is great to hear your voice.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, so like I went back recently and I thought like, what's the earliest that that me and you were talking? And the oldest email I could find was 2018.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was like, oh wow, it's been quite a while, and we've collaborated on a bunch of different projects in that time. So
that's amazing.
We have like a history.
Yeah, I was just telling my friend that I'm really excited to do this because I feel like you were one of the first collaborators that had faith in me and that was willing to work with me, and I feel like I owe my early success to you guys for being able to work with Milton and King. So it really is kind of fun to come back and do this. So it's my pleasure.
That's very sweet. I do remember those early times when I believe it was, correct me if I'm wrong, was it a one-room challenge?
It probably was. Yeah, I think it might have. Was it my dining room with that really awesome wallpaper that we have? That's the jungle. What is that called?
Oh, it's something. Viva Tropicana.
Yes. I still love it.
Yeah. Maybe just explain a little bit what that one-room challenge is to people listening so they understand like how it is that we got on each other's radar.
So the one-room challenge is a makeover that's hosted by Linda. It's almost like Madonna. It's Linda, and she's a fantastic lady that's put together. I think originally she did this with a group of friends. She can correct me if I'm wrong. And then it grew into something much larger than what it started as. And now people can join, and you can be just a homeowner, you can be a designer. And the premise is that you have about 6 to 8 weeks, and there's a timeline, and you have to do weekly postings. And you have a room that you hope to make over. And then the goal by the end is to have a finished room to share with everyone on your blog or your Instagram. And it's great because not only does it motivate you to complete those projects that you want to do, but it also is very inspiring because people come up with fantastic ideas that are creative or done in a way that maybe someone else hasn't done them. And it's great. I've always loved it. I don't really have time to do it too much these days, but it's really fun for me to see people's rooms and follow along, even if I'm not able to participate.
And it gives people also an opportunity to work with companies that are sponsoring it, right? So maybe you're someone who's smaller, doesn't have some huge social media following. There's companies that get involved because they want to sponsor these rooms and they want to get content and photos and all these kinds of things. And it allows people to essentially get either discounts or sometimes free product, just depending on the company's involvement. And so it's a really good way to get your hands on some cool stuff.
Cool stuff, and to feature cool stuff, and to then in turn be featured by great companies. So it's wonderful for people that are trying to get started in maybe the interior design, Instagram or blogging world, because you get highlighted on other platforms that maybe you wouldn't otherwise, and you get your name associated with great companies like Milton and King.
Well, I remember when I think I got an email from you about that one-room challenge, and you talked about what you wanted to do, and I was immediately drawn to what I saw already on your blog and on your Instagram, which your blog is Jeweled Interiors. Do you still run that blog?
I do still have the blog, and there's going to be a lot of new content in the near future. Yes, I do.
Okay, because the one-room challenge, it's evolved a little bit, but it was primarily, from my understanding, a blogging thing where it was all about people posting a blog every week over the course of 6 to 8 weeks, talking about the evolution of whatever room they chose to do. And now some people still do the blogging aspect, but it seems to be, so many people are just on socials or Instagram or Facebook or whatever it is, or TikTok, and they're sort of documenting it just through those platforms now, it seems like.
Right. It gives people options at what level they want to participate at.
But yeah, I remember seeing yours, and I was immediately drawn to it because I think you have a very, very unique style. And it's one of the reasons why I was looking forward to having you on this podcast, because unusual is the wrong word, because it makes you think it's like way out of this world quirky. But it's eclectic, but it's very luxurious. It's very, I feel like and I didn't know this term prior, but after looking up stuff, there's something called a Hollywood Regency style. I don't know if you would identify your style as that or not.
I love Hollywood Regency. Yeah.
But it feels like that's kind of the world that you create with a lot of your projects that you do. Would that be correct?
I would say I'm a little bit more eclectic than just Hollywood Regency, but that's one of my very favorite styles. I draw a lot of inspiration from that.
So how would you define that style, that Hollywood Regency style?
So I just did a whole home in Hollywood Regency, and it's a lot of chinoiserie, and think of bamboo or glam, high gloss, animal print. It wasn't. It's not. How do I say this? It spanned several years, so it's not just one decade, because even in the 70s there was some Hollywood Regency, and it's kind of this dramatic approach to design, and it's very different than what's popular right now, where maybe there's a lot of neutrals and subtle colors and light wood tones, and so it does stand out compared to what a lot of homes might look like right now, and I love it. It's fantastic. I love bright colors. I love wallpaper, and that's where my heart is right in that zone.
Yeah, it definitely shows. But you said you're more eclectic. So, what are some of the elements that you find yourself sort of? I mean, do you find yourself repeatedly kind of going to certain tools and going to certain styles to satisfy your taste?
Right. So in my own house, it's kind of hard to define, because if I like it, I just find a way to make it work. And I think that can be done if you're skillful and patient enough to figure out what it is that you like and stick to it and make sure the scale's right and that the colors work. But I might have, a 70s lucite coffee table next to a French sofa with an Art Deco rug, and just like a random assortment of all sorts of things that somehow strangely work in my own home. In my client's home, of course, I have to be more careful and have to listen to what they want. But in my own house, there are no rules. If it works and I like it, I try it for a while, and then maybe eventually we try something new. But it's very freeing to not feel like I have to be stuck to just one style.
Yeah. Well, you definitely make it work, because every time, I mean, I've seen projects where you've kind of shown your mood boards or your ideas and flat lays and stuff, and even I go like, well, how's that going to work? How's it? And every single time, I am blown away by the end result.
Well, thank you.
It really is. Like, everyone should definitely go check out your Instagram and your blog when you said you're getting it all updated with new content and stuff. It's really inspiring, and it's always eye-catching.
Thank you. I like to use, I found that there are certain elements that, regardless of the style, seem to repeat. Maybe that's a shape or a finish or a color. And so I try to find, when I'm being eclectic, repeating elements that are commonalities between different eras, and then I repeat that a couple times in a room. And so wallpaper is a great way, kind of a great stepping stone for that, because it's a chinoiserie, but it's been something that's been seen over several decades, and so then I can pull from those different decades that it's been popularized and make the whole room still feel pulled together, even though it's very eclectic.
And I noticed you and maybe we can dive a bit into your history with this, because I know you are always finding kind of like rare one-off items, whether it's a coffee table or a particular chair. Like you're always finding these rare pieces. And so you must always have, your eyes must always just be peeled for whether it's like, what is it called? Like antique shops or those types of places that have these kind of rare one-off kind of items. And I know that I believe you said you lived in the UK. Is that right?
We did. Yes, my husband's a fighter pilot, and we lived there for a couple of years. And so I would go to the auctions, and I think that's really where my roots are, is going to these auctions and seeing things that, a bow front dresser next to some mid-century lamp or something, and realizing these things do not intuitively go together, but they're still beautiful together, even though they're accidentally paired because the auctioneer placed them that way. And so it was during that time frame where I realized, by finding these, like I mentioned, commonalities, you can make this eclectic look, and as long as the scale's right, and it works. So my roots are definitely in the antique world, the vintage world. Now I do a lot of client work, and I use a little bit fewer antiques, but I still try to work those in when I can, because it really just makes the room special.
Yeah. So you're telling me you're married to Maverick, is that right?
Except he's Air Force.
Oh, Air Force. Okay, gotcha. So you're a military family, so to speak, right?
Right.
And so you were living in the UK, and what were you doing while you were were you? So I think I read on your website that you were over there, and what would you like, refurbish pieces or trade pieces, or what were you doing over there that kind of got you? Because is that what kind of got you started in this world, or did it go back even further?
A little bit further. Before that, I decided that this is something I wanted to be good. Now, I don't have a degree in design. I'm self-taught. I've been doing this for long enough that I feel like I'm qualified and can create beautiful rooms. But at the beginning, in the very inception of it, I decided that if I was going to be good at this, I needed to read. And because back then we had, books. So I went to the library and I checked out all the books. In one library, I went to the next library, checked out all the books. So it was probably 30 or 40 books. I just really immersed myself in this, and all the books I could get my hands on.
And what sparked that? What sparked you all of a sudden? I'm going to go read a ton of books.
It's funny. I had a friend come over who was an interior designer, and it intrigued me because it was something I'd never been into before, quite honestly. And to think that someone could have that as their occupation, as their passion, and that they could be a master of the trade of interior design was at the time unique to me. And I thought, that's what I'm creative. I like my home. I want my home to be special. And so just this friend's visit many years ago sparked this curiosity that then turned into a passion, and now my full-time job.
So you checked out all these books. Were there any in particular that you were like, oh, this one, or that you would recommend someone who maybe is in the same position that you were then, kind of just getting started, getting their feet wet?
My very favorite ones initially were these domino books. I don't even know if you can get your hands on them still, but they were domino, and they showed you how to mix eclectically. Actually, you have a mirror from one era, they mix it with a chest or a dresser from another, and then a couple other things. And I'm like, I like the way they approach design, and it's kind of a non-traditional, slightly funky way. And so I think that in my early roots, I probably deserve to. I owe credit to domino.
Wow, that's really interesting. And so you read all these books. I'm guessing you're sort of you're using your own home as the test case for a lot of these things.
I should mention that not all these books were new and updated, and it's fun because a lot of them were straight from the 80s, and it was chintz and florals and ruffles. And at the time, I had just no interest in this, but now this look is back, and I feel like it's so familiar and safe to me because I spent so much time reading about that in my early design education. So I love it. I just did this beautiful bedspread that's drops at the top, the top of the mattress down with a huge ruffle skirt totally 80s inspired, but it's going to be so beautiful in this room. So it's great to have read these books that maybe seemed out of date at the time, because now that it's relevant again. But so I read all these books, and then we moved to England right about the same time that I finished reading every book I could get my hand on. Continued to read while in England, and it was because the principles were the same. You know, lighting, floor plans, scale, colors, patterns. You know, whether it's in the 80s or whether it's, you know, domino, these same principles kept repeating themselves. And I was realizing that, you know, this is something that can be learned. This is something that I can figure out, and I can master this, right? So it's not quite that simple. It took many, many years of trial, error, and whatnot, but it is obtainable, right? It takes effort, but it's something that someone can figure out if you have the passion to do it.
And so, being in the UK, how long were you there for?
2 years. And while we were there, I somehow, I had a friend tip me off on, you know, you're into this, you should go to these auctions. And so there was this one auction house called D.I.Y.er, that was about an hour and a half from my house. So I'd go there every week. There was another one in the little town that I was in. And I would spend half a day and buy everything that I could get that could fit into my American vehicle. So I was driving on the wrong side of the road with my American car, shoved, and they would laugh at me at the office because it was like a jigsaw puzzle. Everyone else had their big dealer vans would roll up, and you know they had the equipment and the tools, and I was only there for 2 years. I wasn't going to go buy a van, so I would load my car full of chairs and tables and case goods, and it was like this jigsaw puzzle. They'd sit and laugh at me. And they'd make fun of me in their British accents, I'm sure. But it was great. I loved it. I learned so much. And then I would take those back. I would refinish them. I would reupholster them and then resell them.
Okay, so that leads me to two questions. One is, well, the first one would be, so you're taking these back and you're upholstering them. So that sort of begs the question, did you already know how to upholster furniture and do all this stuff? Or is that something that you had to teach yourself as well at around the same time? Or did you know this from before? Did your mom teach you? How did, you know, where did you gain those skills? Or was it all part of the same learning process?
You know, I wish I had more YouTube back then, but same thing, books. I had to read books. And I had to just kind of figure it out. I'm not going to say that I do sofas well. I've done about 4 sofas in my life, and I wouldn't resell them to a client, but it was a fun challenge. But as far as drop seats or just simple dining room chairs, those are things that I felt comfortable doing, and it was a skill set that was just really fun to learn. And my husband would be deployed. I'd have 2 little kids, and I'd stay up way too late at night and wake up way too early in the morning to try to fit this hobby at the time into my life, and I learned a lot of skills along the way.
And did being in the UK affect you at all in terms of aesthetics or fashion, you know, the interior fashion at the time or anything like that? Because I know, like, over there, it's always funny because, you know, working for a wallpaper company, and as much as it's coming back, you know, still on an average day, if I'm stuck in the elevator with someone and they find out that I work for a wallpaper company, they go, "Oh, is wallpaper a thing again?" You know. And I'm like, yeah, well, yeah, it sure is. You know, it seems to be blowing up. But in the UK, it doesn't seem to have ever gone away. And it seems to be sort of a part of, you know, the culture there in a way. Did you find that when you were over there that's the fashion sense for interiors and the trends and all that kind of stuff, did that influence you at all? Did you absorb any of that while there?
I think the Brits just do it well in general. I think the thing about British design is that a lot of times it's a lot more generational than it is here in America. And they tend to acquire things maybe more than at least my upbringing. Maybe in America things are a little bit more disposable. They have a history of fantastic antiques, so maybe those are things worth keeping. And so they naturally have this layered look that some people in America obviously do as well. But I think our general culture is that, you know, we have things that are built and then they're a trend for a while and then you throw them away and then you go to the next trend. Whereas in England, you have antiques that were your grandma's, your great grandma's, and maybe you keep some of those pieces and you layer them in And I think the same with other parts of Europe as well, that it's that layered look that I'm drawn to. I don't want something to look like it was all made in a certain year necessarily, because then 10 years from now, you'll look back and say that was so 2000 and whatever, right? So I think the Brits definitely inspired me in that sense. And I still love following, like Wendy Morrison, for example. I don't know if you follow her. Rugs are just fantastic in the way that she mixes the fringe with the velvet and the animal print and the rugs. It's just gorgeous. I love her style. And I'm definitely inspired by European interior design.
And so you were there for 2 years, and you find yourself coming back to the U.S., and you're on the East Coast around Virginia, right? Is that where you settled after the UK?
We were here for an assignment. My husband worked for Obama, and we were here for a couple years, and then we went to a flying assignment and went to Rhode Island for a year, which I think is shortly thereafter. We moved back here, and that's where I met you virtually. And so we've been here ever since.
Okay. How do you like it there?
Oh, it's home. We love it.
Yeah, it's home.
DC is the best.
And so that's where I assume we get to the beginning of this sort of phase where you're kind of really making the house a home and
Right.
putting your stamp on every room.
Yes. From room to room. Yep. And largely it's still in the same condition that it was as I finished each one of those room makeovers. I liked it, and I haven't gotten sick of much of it yet. And so what you see is very similar to as what it still is for now. A lot of that's because I'm so busy doing client work, and I get my fix on other people's houses. So that's always helpful on the budget.
Yeah. And
But
so did you sort of just have, when you got your home, did you literally kind of just have a blank canvas and it was like,
oh yeah,
okay, room by room, here we go?
right. We bought this house when we lived here several assignments previously. And so at the time, we just left it blank and neutral. And then we moved away, came back. And then that was the time we decided, we could be here for a while. We could retire here. And so that's when we started to really personalize the space versus keeping it bare and neutral for a rental.
Yeah. And so what was like the first room you tackled?
I did my daughter, my oldest daughter, I'd promised her that I'd do her room first. And that was just a short little makeover. But then the dining room and living room were the first one room challenge that I did in Virginia.
Okay. So the dining room is where you use that Viva Tropicana, which is the animal print with like the duck egg background. Let's use that room as an example because I'm familiar with it. What you said, you always try to find something that I don't know if you call it a theme or a tool or something that runs through the room that kind of ties it together. What was that theme for that room? Was it that duck egg light blue? Because I know you use that in the drapes. And what was like the thing that sort of ties that room together that you feel is like the unifying through way?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember because the furniture has changed a little bit since then. But back then, I'm trying to remember the chandelier. I think I was going for this French bohemian vibe. And I repeated the themes in the living room. I pulled out some of the themes of the dining room and repeated them in the living room. But I was trying to make it a sophisticated space that was still felt very youthful and playful. And the color and the wallpaper definitely made that happen. But I didn't want it to feel overwhelmingly playful. I wanted it to be a balance. And so I think I had Milo Bowman chairs, cantilever chairs, and black marble brass table, which is very postmodern, but also very sexy and almost, not high-end Kelly Wearstler, but Kelly Wearstler-esque at the time. And and then a sideboard and I think I had a really bold black and white rug at the time, which I had the same rug in the other room. So my goal for that space was that those two really spoke to each other. So there was cohesion, just like you would do when you were designing a house. You'd have repeating themes as you walk from room to room, repeating colors, patterns, and the drapes matched on both sides, the rug matched on both sides. And even though there was no wallpaper in the living room, it felt like an extension of the dining room.
Do you entertain a lot at your house? Do you? Because it seemed like that dining room seems like, oh, that's a dining room built for entertaining. Do you have guests over quite a bit? And
Well, we try to, and we eat there regularly, a couple times a week. We don't want it to be a room that just sits empty. A lot of people post COVID have decided to do away with their dining room. They decided that it's not a space that's usable for them. But for the Marlows, we legitimately use it, and it's our place where we have dinners, Sunday dinner, and maybe a Thursday dinner, twice a week, and it's really nice. It's just always set up. We always just reset the table. We come in, we have our formal napkins, and it's great. But we do entertain there, and I have to tell you, when people walk in, they sit down and they look around, and it's like it takes them a second to take it all in and figure out what is happening with this wallpaper. Why is it so busy? Why are there so many animals around me right now? And it's usually a mixed reaction. I think most people will like it. Every once in a while, you get someone that's very conservative and just doesn't quite know how to process it. And those are my favorites because I just love the look on their face.
yeah,
Because not everybody has to like what I like, right? It's my house.
right.
And so if my father-in-law doesn't like it, that's okay. I'm totally fine with that. In fact, it pleases me that not everybody likes it.
Yeah,
And not that they don't like the wallpaper, it's just the overall effect might be something different than they're used to being around or being associated with. So my neighbor, for example, came in one day and his response was something like, well, I'm glad you found something that makes you happy. Because the look is very dramatic, and I've seen his house and it's the exact opposite, right? And I'm happy for him that he's happy. I'm happy for me that I'm happy, and that's great.
yeah. Well, it must. I mean, it's just cool to make an impact. I think. Like, I could only imagine like being a guest at your house, and I would just be like, "Wow, this is so cool. It's so fun. It's brave, for lack of a better term. It's bold. I think it's so cool because otherwise a house is a house. But when you have so much, when there's something like that, and you feel like it represents that person or that person's personality, I don't know. I feel like you don't want to go into a house where everything's the same and everything's a white wall and everything's just. I feel like it just makes life more interesting.
Agreed. Amen. For sure. That's the point of interior design, is to make it tell your story, not to tell the story of someone else on a home makeover show or Pinterest, right? It should be something that reflects your home and is unique to you. So I agree. And we actually, for a while there, we were renting this house out on a, not Airbnb, but something like that, right? Where you can rent the house out. And so it was really fun to see people's reactions as they came in. They'd seen some pictures, but then just to have them see it in real life. Again, they just jaw drops and they just can't. It's unlike something they've seen before, and it's so fun every time.
Yeah.
We did it regularly enough that it was a universal reaction, that they're like, wow, this place is so unique. It's so different. And to me, it feels normal, but to other people, it must not be normal.
Now, I'm not trying to psychoanalyze you, but I just wonder, because you have so many of these kind of bold and eclectic things, what do you feel like? How do you feel like those rooms represent you? What do you feel like you're, you know what I mean? What is it that inside you that's being represented in these spaces that not for your clients, but for your own house? What is it? What story about you is it telling?
Well, that's a good question. Well, so we've lived everywhere. I mean, we've had adventures around America and, like you said, overseas. We are adventurous people. We're not afraid of color or travel. So I think that fits us in the sense that it's kind of bold and daring. And I have one daughter that disagrees. She someday wants to have a very neutral, safe house. So for her, I'm sorry. But for the rest of us, they're digging it. It suits the family. I at one point thought, maybe it's time to redo the dining room, and the family said, no, we love it. Don't touch it. So the wallpaper has remained at the request of the kids, which is fun.
That's funny. So you have one rebellious child that wants to be the opposite of what mom is.
That's okay. That's totally fine. And if that's her way of rebellion, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
You have that boring house.
I'm going to be neutral, Mom.
Take that.
Wow. So how many children do you have?
We have four.
Four. Okay. Busy household. And what's who's
Yes.
the oldest?
We have a senior, sadly.
Oh, so she's
Yep.
getting close to going off to college, or
Oh, yeah. But every time we talk about it, we start to cry. So,
yeah.
but she's great. And then our youngest is 10. So that's a spread.
All right. And so and three out of the four are 75% are pro awesome bold interiors.
That's what they say. That's the word on the street.
That's so cool. Um, okay, so then basically what we're saying is your design choices, like you see yourself as an adventurous person, obviously someone who's not afraid to pick up and move to a new place and to try new things and be adventurous and be fun, and that's what your interiors. That's the story that your interiors are telling you
Yeah,
about you.
that we're not 80, so we don't want it to look stuffy, but we want it to look pulled together and sophisticated because we're in the middle. But we want it to be still playful and fun, but um, polished.
Even when you're 80, I can't imagine you not all of a sudden, you're 79 years old and you go, you know what, all this color stuff, not for me anymore.
Valid
I
point.
don't think that's going to be your story, but who knows? You never know, and nothing wrong with that. If that was the case, you're doing what you want to do, and that's all good. But
I'll tell you when I'm 80 how it goes.
yeah, you let me know. Okay, very cool. So I feel like the only room that, now that I think about it, because I'm thinking of the different spaces that we've collaborated on together, and I know it's the dining room. I know there was like a basement bedroom, like game room sort of area.
Oh yeah, uh-huh.
The entryway,
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. That is, yes.
um, and I want to say, was there like a closet space or something?
Yeah, that sounds familiar, but which one was it?
But anyway, I was
Can't
just
think.
going to say the only room that I could think of that was more kind of, it's, well, I wouldn't call it neutral, but it was just black and white, was your entryway. But
Mhm.
then in terms of wallpaper, but then you have that like beautiful green, like, what is it? Like it's a dresser or an
Yeah,
end table or
malachite.
something.
It bit the dust. We have something else now out of necessity, but we did love that for a while. That actually falls in line with how I feel about decorating spaces, and I'll go through that real fast. So if it's a larger space that's hard to change, for example, a two-story entryway, I decided to go with a neutral color. So we went white because it's really hard to get on scaffolding and paint, right?
Hmm.
So we went white in the entryway, and we wanted it to still have a little bit of personality. So on the one story parts, you'd have to see my house for it to make sense. We did a white background with the black polka dots, so that there's still pattern. But someday that could be changed if we need to because it's easily reached. But it's still there. We love it, and it still feels open, bright, and airy. So in the larger spaces, we go a little bit more safe, and in the smaller spaces like powder rooms, dining rooms, laundry rooms, that's where we go bold and statement making. First of all, it's less space, it's less expensive if you change your mind someday. And it's supposed to be a special little moment because it's its own little room. So when you walk into a powder room, that's a perfect place to go crazy. Like, why would you not go crazy in a powder room? An entryway or a huge living room with, you know, lots of wall space. I understand that's a great place to go safe. But the smaller the room, I feel like there's more freedom to be bold and go kind of over the top.
Well, yeah, that's what we tell people too. Obviously, if the room's enclosed and it's not connected to any other part of the house, like for like a powder room, you shut the door, and for obvious or a bathroom, for obvious reasons, it's you got four walls on all sides, because you want privacy in the bathroom. That's
Mm-hmm.
it's not going to affect any other room of the house. The most it will is if a door's open, your line of sight is going to be visible, which sometimes is actually really cool and perfect. To have
Absolutely.
that little gem hiding at the end of the hallway, going like, "What's that over there?"
Right.
But yeah, that totally makes sense for the kind of more wide open spaces. You want something possibly a bit more safe because it is, in some ways, maybe affecting the whole home or a big portion of it, right?
And maybe that case you do the ceiling, or you frame out something on a board that's wallpapered, but in a frame, so it's contained.
Yeah.
I've done all those things.
And so much like reading books and learning to upholster, you did all the installations of the wallpaper yourself, right?
Yeah, I don't anymore. But back then, when it was my own house, yeah, I did. And I have to say, Milton King is the easiest, quite honestly, that I've installed. And I've used many companies, but I love the technique recommended for painting. There's, if I tell me if I'm wrong, there's no book ending, right?
No.
So we don't have to worry about that. And you paste, is it paste the wall or paste the paper?
Paste the wall, yep.
Paste the wall. Yeah, you paste the wall and you slap it up there. You slide it into place, and it's by far out of the ones I've used, that style is my favorite.
Oh, that's good to know.
I
Um,
I have sticky ones that you have to pull the back off. They're not impossible, but it's for me personally, it's a little more challenging. And then anything requiring bookending, that's just an extra step. So pasting the wall is my favorite.
and so did you basically just read the instructions, or did you read books, or where did you learn to kind of perfect your installation
Oh,
skills?
your website was really helpful.
Well, that's good to know.
Down to telling me Romans E 180 or whatever the name of the paste is, and so I just followed exactly what it said to do. And I think there were instructions, maybe even in the rolls that came, or maybe it was just on the website. But it was step by step, easy because I just did what you told me to do, and so I highly recommend it.
But you did get into some pretty challenging spots, especially with your entryway and doing the ceiling and
Yeah,
the corners and all that kind of stuff.
right.
Were there what are you're not a wallpaper installer by trade at the moment, but what would you tell people that are doing it themselves? Like what were some of like the most challenging things, and how did you work that out?
Well, in the entryway, yeah, there was some funky ceilings, ceiling angles, and that's why I went with that pattern that I did. It was a very small repeat, and if it got off slightly, it would be okay. I knew that it wouldn't matter as much. Um, just making sure that you stay plumb as you go, and checking each panel with your with level to make sure that you're still straight up and down to 90. That's the trick. And
So
giving your
did you always sort of like do that replumb at the corners when you would get to a corner of a wall, like an inner inside corner, and you would cut the little piece, or did you just
Sometimes I have, if I need, especially if I get off a little bit, then I use the corners to recover. But the dining room was thankfully, pretty straightforward, and I didn't have to cheat at all. It just kind of magically fell into place.
okay? So you just pushed the wallpaper into that corner and you just kept going.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
And I started. One important thing to think about is where you want to start and where you want to end.
Yeah.
And so I wanted it to be centered in the middle of the window because that was the view that I would see most of the time. And then I ended it in some random little short corner on the opposite side of the room. So that, what is that called? The dead corner.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, if you look closely, it probably doesn't exactly line up right there in one little section, but
But nobody sees it.
nobody sees it. And there's always that trick where you can cut out a leaf or a bird or something that covers makes it look like it does match. Now that I hire installers for all my clients' work, I learned the real tricks to wallpaper.
So did you do that? So you cut out elements of the wallpaper and kind of pasted them over?
I have not, but that's what all my installers do now. They like I just did a powder room with a cheetah on one end, and then on the other end it's trees, but the trees didn't quite match up on the dead corner, and so they just cut out some leaves, and it just overlaps beautifully, and you would never know that it didn't match.
Wow. Tricks of the
And the
trade.
yeah, another thing they do really well is when they're covering. This is something I did too, but I love how they cover the faceplates on all your switches, and it just looks so polished, so you don't even notice that there's a switch there. You can buy the nice switches that have the acrylic faceplates, and then you put the wallpaper between two pieces of acrylic, and it looks like the switch is invisible, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're $200 a pop, and if someone doesn't want to invest that, there's a really easy way to just take the extra wallpaper, line up the repeat where, so say you're doing my dining room, and maybe there was a monkey right there where the light switch was. I just find some extra that we didn't use, find the monkey, line it up over the faceplate, fold it back so it looks like it's straight right in line, and adhere it and screw it back on, and you would never know there's faceplate except for the little switches, the little light switches.
And you didn't find that the paste or the paper had any problem sticking to the light switch plate, did you?
No.
So you didn't have to primer it or anything.
I have used a couple different ways. Sometimes we use a spray adhesive. I think I've used just wallpaper paste and let it dry before as well. And then you just cut at little 45s in the corners and fold back, and I use like tape to adhere it on the inside to secure it.
Oh, okay.
Or sometimes I personally have used hot glue.
Oh, okay. And that works just fine.
I'm sure that's not how the pros do it, but that's what I've done.
Tips from Jewel. That's good.
You heard it here first.
That's awesome. Okay, cool. So would you say is your house complete now? Would you say, or are there still rooms that need attention? Aside from like the ongoing, constantly changing thing, do you feel like all the rooms in where you live now are at a level where you're like, okay, this house is good now? Or are there still places you need to tackle?
It's good for now. I think in a few years we'll probably have a little more time to think about it. Right now, like I said, I spend so much time dreaming and scheming in other people's homes that the cobbler's children have no shoes. So, but we're very comfortable here. We love it, and it's been this way long enough that we've never lived in a house longer than this, right? So, from my kids' perspective, this is a long time to have something, and it feels safe to them. It feels like what they know, and it's kind of nice after having a childhood of changing all the time to have something kind of stay the same for a minute. So
how long have you been at the house where you're at now?
6 years, 5 years, 6 years.
Okay.
And previous to that, we move every 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
So this is unique that we've been here, and we lived in this house 2 years, previous to that at one point.
Okay.
So this really has been home with the schools and the community.
Right.
It's great.
Yeah, that's always tough on the kids changing schools and stuff. But at least if you've been, well, it must be 6 years because, well, yeah, I guess it would be 6 years.
6 years.
So for the youngest, it's 10. They were 4 when they moved back in there, and so that would feel like your whole life for the most part.
It really would.
Yeah.
And for the 18-year-old, she remembers all the moves, and so I think she still likes having something that's the same.
Yeah,
she's okay with it.
So then, at some point here, I mean, you've mentioned it a couple times how you're working with clients now. So you, at some point, I know from our email exchanges before, there were a couple of was it like TV opportunities, or you were going to be on a show? Like, whatever happened to that? Did you ever?
Yes.
Oh, so tell me.
It's coming up. I don't know how much I can say, but yes, we did film something, and maybe or maybe not. I don't know how much I can say, but that in the future, maybe there will be something to tell you, and maybe there will be some more things. But yes, without answering directly, yes, we did film something, and later this year, maybe we can talk about that a little more.
Oh, okay, cool. Because I remember something happening, and I feel like it was a few years ago when you mentioned it to me.
Last year we filmed it,
and I just remember just from watching your Instagram stories and how you would kind of engage with your followers on Instagram, and I just always thought like, oh, you would be perfect for this. You're very I don't know. You seem very easy and comfortable on a camera.
Well, thank you.
And so it just, to me, it was like, oh yeah, well, that's obvious. It just seemed like that was a very natural pathway where I could see you doing, whether it's, like HGTV shows or something like that. I could see you being someone that could slide into that pretty comfortably.
I enjoyed the experience, and I learned a lot, and I don't know how much I can say, but it was great. And TV is a whole different animal.
Yeah.
It's completely a whole new world of learning and trying to understand a new skill set. And I'm grateful for that opportunity.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I mean, congratulations on that. We do work with occasionally, different TV shows and whatnot. And it is a different beast. You're working with production companies and production budgets and timelines that change, and it's always a little bit crazy, but that's just the nature of that business.
Right. I think there's never quite enough time or money to do what you want to do, and you have to do the best you can given the circumstances. Somewhat like a one room challenge, right?
Yeah. And
Anytime you have that hard stop on the back end.
and just make sure the camera only captures that one angle.
Never. I've never done that.
But so okay, so you've dabbled a little bit in that, and we'll find out more about that in the future. But so at some point, I know you were talking about it. I remember emailing with you where you're like, "Yeah, I think I might take on this client, and I'm might get into maybe offering design services." And now, the way it sounds is you've got a full blown interior design business that you have a backlog of people who want to work with you.
Yeah, this is true. For years, people would reach out to me and I'd say, the timing's not right. I wanted to finish my own house. I wanted to make sure that I was very proficient and good at what I did before I offered client services. And there's definitely a learning curve anytime you start a new business. And so I've been doing it 2 or 3 years now, and jumped right into multi-million-dollar homes in the D.C. area.
Wow.
They just find me on Instagram, I suppose, and word of mouth. And so, like you said, it's finding clients has never been the issue. Just managing the hours in the day and making sure that everybody's taken care of home on the home front, but is probably the challenge of it all. But it's been fun. It's been so great to work with fantastic clients who are brave enough to want to work with someone that is known for color and pattern. That people don't come to me if they want boring rooms, right?
Yeah.
People come to me if they want to try something unique. And so that's probably something I need to credit Instagram for, because it's a platform that's out there and it's easy to look up my work and see whether they're a good fit for me or not. And not everybody is, and I get that. So people that like wallpaper, people that like color and all those things that we've talked about, they somehow find me on Pinterest or Instagram, and I have lots of work, and we have so many fun rooms coming up. I can't wait to show you, but I'm trying to wrap it all up before some other things happen this fall and get them all published or at least photographed. And then I'll have a whole bunch of like 30 or 40 rooms in the works. So
wow. Yeah, and I saw on your website you said you were taking people up like 5 months in advance, or like.
Yeah, right now I'm trying to wrap up all this and not taking on anyone new right now for the next little bit until I have some answers to my upcoming schedule. But yeah,
You're going to need to hire a staff.
I have some.
Oh, you already do have a staff.
Yeah, it's great.
Wow, look at you go. Yeah, I mean, like I would imagine that anybody that's reaching out to you is going, I want a jewel home. You know what I mean? Like if it were me, I'd be like, Jewel, here you go, have at it, do what you want in this space because it's going to look awesome. Do you get many people or anybody who's like, I like your style, but I want something toned down? Or
yes, I have one client that's neutral.
Oh, really?
And she's very nice, and it's actually a challenge for me because it's different than the way my brain naturally works. But I've loved it, and I'm grateful for it. And so I have one client that's neutral and one that the house doesn't require as much pattern. But everybody else is kind of like, here's the keys, go ahead. Or why don't you bring me your ideas and then we'll edit, give me 2 versions or 3 versions, we'll edit down to what the client wants. So generally clients are quite trusting, and those are some of my favorite rooms when people are just like, go ahead, here's the budget.
Yeah. So now that you're doing that, and it sounds like you may have, you have to be careful about scheduling too much coming up. What is the next step for you? Are you just sort of like in a holding pattern and a waiting game?
I am. I'm waiting for a few answers before I can make plans for the next year. Worst case scenario, which is not a worst case at all, is I just keep doing what I'm doing and take clients back on. Best case scenario is kind of a pivot from this into something else.
Yeah.
Temporarily.
Is there any particular project that you're working on right now that you're like super excited about?
Oh, so many good ones. Uh, so I have one house. Not to talk about other people's wallpapers, but it's Gracie, hand painted Gracie wallpaper from China,
Mm-hmm.
and marbled like wallpaper marbled ceilings, and lots of color, lots of Hollywood Regency, and that one's almost done. We're two dining room chairs and a chair in the music room away from being complete in that house.
Mm-hmm.
I have another one that I picked up some fantastic, funky gold Art Deco slipper chairs, and that's the inspiration for the home. And I just can't wait to show you. It's all going to be so fun and unique. And that house, she said, I like bold colors. The bolder, the better. Kind of like go crazy. So
Say no more. I'm on it.
Yeah, we got this. Actually, I think she's even more bold than I am. Her favorite color is orange.
Oh, wow.
I think she would be happy if I just painted every room in the house bright orange. But even for me, that's a lot. So
Yeah. Wow.
so it's been fun.
How cool. And so, not to give you too much to take on or anything, but if someone was interested in having you design for them, where do they go? Where do they just hit you up on Instagram or
Yeah, well, that works.
where do they go to
I
your
also
website?
I have another website as well, jewelmarlowe.com. But yeah, Instagram's just as good as any and probably an easy way to get a hold of me. And it would be booking out for the future, not taking on anything new right now, but booking out for next year. Especially once I figure out some contingencies, which I could talk about more in private. But
Yeah.
yeah,
And what's the name? Is the name of your company just Jewel Marlowe or is it
Jewel Marlowe LLC.
LLC? Okay. And then so they can just go to your website. Is that still
Jeweled Interiors is there. That's more my DIY website, and more business stuff on jewelmarlowe.com. But like I said, my Instagram, I respond to those DMs as well, and that's a good way to look me up, and then I can send you my email.
And so when you are like these new exciting homes that you're thinking about, is the end is sort of the last step? Are you always getting these places photographed and stuff for your portfolio? And
Yeah, we're about to. That's the goal.
so you're hiring like a local professional photographer and doing it, or are you taking your own photos?
Some of the rooms I'll just do myself, but yes, that will be once they're all wrapped up. We're going to hire some. I can shoot, but I can't shoot as well as others. So for some of those more high-end rooms, we'll be bringing in the pros.
Awesome. Well, it's all very exciting. It sounds like you're going to be a big TV star. I'm just kidding.
No, I don't know. I don't know. Don't jinx me.
I'm kidding. No, but I mean, it sounds like you have some exciting stuff going on, and it's really cool to actually be on with you and be talking to you like this, because normally you would just get an email from me, and you probably, who knows what gets lost in translation. But just to see you going from that very first room to now, it sounds like having a very flourishing interior design business with no shortage of clientele. It's just so cool to see, and I can't think of anybody who deserves it more, because you've from the very beginning you've done the hard work, you've read the books, you've worked on your own home, you've done stuff for free, you've really just gone to school on it, really.
It's been a journey.
And here you are, now ready to take on the next challenge, and it's all very exciting. So I'm very, very happy for you.
I feel like you and Milton and King have been there from the beginning, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I can see the potential, and I wouldn't, I'm not some special person that has any sort of, I think, special sense or anything. I just think it's very obvious your talent and what the possibilities could be. So I'm very excited to follow along on your Instagram and see everything that's going on. I've taken up about nearly an hour of your time, so I'll let you go. I'm sure your family's probably wanting to have dinner soon.
Well, it's been my pleasure. I appreciate you inviting me to come tonight.
Yeah, so let's keep in touch, and whenever this exciting news comes out, hopefully maybe we can have a short chat and get you back on the podcast, and you can tell us all about whatever it is you may or may not be promoting at the time.
Deal. Sounds good.
All right. Thank you so much, Jewel.
Thank you.